Welcome to Talking Positive with Randy and Alan. This is our first broadcast, and what our show is going to be about is overcoming challenges with positive mental attitude. And throughout our podcasts, we are going to be interviewing different people with different challenges and how they stayed positive in order to succeed their challenge. And today, our first guest of our first show is Steve Grow of Oak Park. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. And it's kind of weird, but thank you.
How about giving us a little background of who you are?
Okay. I'm born a New Yorker. Most of my early childhood was Detroit, and like a lot of other people, my father migrated to the suburbs, and I stayed pretty much in Oak Park, literally for most of my life, with a couple years about a year and a half in California, and about 11 and a half years in Arizona. Otherwise, Oak Park is really where I'm at. Raised family. I've got 5 children. There's a blended marriage, and I've got 9 wonderful grandchildren. And they don't know, and we don't let them know the difference between which one's biological, which one's not. They're as thick as thieves. My mom's still with me at 100 and a half.
Right.
And I guess primarily I would give her the credit for anything I have as a positive spin in life. She is a survivor of the Holocaust. I'm first generation born here. And for those who don't know what that means, it means that basically someone who was a maniacal, evil person was attempting to overthrow the world and came as close as we ever want to see it succeeding. Living through some of her experiences taught me that I got nothing to complain about. Nothing. I have a lot of mixed friends, and I hear some of the plight that their grandparents' lines went through. Again, reinforces the fact that what I've got is pretty much a very privileged life. So that's kind of where I'm at. No college, I'm not a genius, but I hope that I possess a lot of common sense, and that's what I try to pass on to my kids.
Which is great because the problem is common sense is not too common.
That's it's well said, and yes.
Yeah.
So, like Alan said, what we talk about on this show is positivity and being positive. You have been through some hardships in your life.
Yeah,
Would you share what?
I had a few
what
trials and tribulations, some of which I had brought upon myself. And again, I will say that you have 2 choices in life. You can wallow in the mud and like Eeyore, oh woe, oh pitiful me, what do I do? Or like I can't remember who it was that said you pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get going. And when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. So,
That would be me.
But it makes someone chuckle, and it alleviates it takes away the tension. And that's the way I've tried to live my life. I give that credit to my dad. He had probably the most corniest sense of humor, but he always had a joke of the day or a punchline, something that would make you smile. And at some point you think about it later on in the day, and you couldn't help but chuckle to yourself. So between those 2 people, the trials and tribulations that I've been through, some were like I said, some I brought on myself, which I've overcome. Some of which I had no control over, but through life choices, as Alan, you know, I got involved in a horrific motorcycle accident, and believe me, that was not my choice. Again, you have your choice. You want to feel sorry for yourself. After a while, even if you do, nobody really wants to hear it. And if you ever want to find a shortcut to losing friends, just keep wallowing it. So, but with the tools I've gotten from the past and my parents, I said, life goes on. Make the best of it, and find a way. I just posted something today. It's funny. I forgot all about today, quite honestly. And I put it on Facebook, and there was a couple that were dancing a wheelchair. The gal was missing a leg from the knee down, and the guy must be paraplegic because his legs were strapped to the chair, and they were dancing up a storm. And if they can smile, why the hell can't I? And those are my inspirational things I get. So that's kind of where it's at. I get a lot of joy from my kids. I get a tremendous amount of joy from my grandkids, as you know. Very much a family man, which surprises even me because I knew I always wanted a family, but I never really, I guess I didn't anticipate wanting it that much.
You mentioned a couple things. You mentioned one, the blended family.
Yes.
And you mentioned the motorcycle accident. let's start with the blended family. When the family came together, how did that go about with the kids more so than you and your wife?
The kids actually were better at it than the adults. We try to, unfortunately, not on purpose, we project our own fears and inabilities and what ifs of the kids. And the kids are just very matter of fact about it. For 1 week out of the year, they are 1 year apart consecutively, with the oldest being the shortest and the youngest being the tallest. So for one week they're in succession. So that at one point they were all in one of two schools together. They had a lot of friends in common, and we just kind of let them do their own thing. I gave them early on in the relationship. I gave them the ability to say, if you guys can work it out, you have got the authority to say butt out daddy or butt out Bonnie or mommy or whatever title you want to give us. I didn't let them use the term daddy because their father was still alive, and it would just not have been respectful to him. And I'm on the other side of the fence, so I know it, and I wouldn't like it. I always wanted it, but I never pushed the issue. So I gave them the same thing. You can tell us to butt out, respectfully, but let them work it out. So, and they did. And I don't think there's anything better than watching kids mesh together. They are stronger as children than most people have in biological families. And for that, that's a blessing. I didn't do anything, that's them. All I did, I gave them the tools, I gave them the freedom, and they took it from there. Kids are innocent. They'll work it out until they're teenagers. Then they're a bit on the jerky side, but they still worked it out.
That's whether biological or blended.
This is exactly true. Something happens to the wiring, and then for their teenage years, they get a little bit like, oh, I don't want to know you. And then something happens when they turn into their 20s, and they become mensches again. They become nice human beings. And I've got wonderful children and wonderful grandchildren.
On the accident, if you can talk to us a little bit about that and how being positive helped you come out of that.
And I was on my way to work, minding my own business. And for those of you who are familiar with the area, I'm going through Berkeley on Coolidge, and there's a last curve before you hit where Woodward and Coolidge intersect. Mm-hmm. And there's what I call cut-through alley. Everybody takes that shortcut to go to McDonald's. And on that particular day, I was in the right lane, and there was a lady in the left lane, or I don't even know if it was a lady. I take that back. A van in the left lane saw somebody coming, hit the brakes, created a blind spot. Something I never saw. So I'm putting along, literally about 30, 35 miles an hour speed limit, because that's what you do when you get to be smart and intelligent. And this person ran it, and we met. And for the first couple of years, I truly remember the accident in the wrong context. I always told people she ran into me, and then I later realized maybe I ran into her, and I figured it out throughout the years. We kind of merged together. It was just one of the things, in every sense of the word, it was an accident. And once you come to that realization, it's a little bit easier to let go of the anger and the attitude, I guess. Believe me, the first couple years of recovery, I was very angry at this person. You changed my life. You took away my livelihood. You took away my ability to ride again. And then it's like, when you come to that realization that no matter what I did, it would have still ended up the same way. The only thing I could have done to avoid that accident was not take my motorcycle to work that day. The only thing she could have done would have been not run the stop signs, and life would have been wonderful. But even then, even had she not completely run it, if the van would have swerved over, I got hit that way. So I mean, too many variables.
Right.
It happened, and I had a choice. As I'm going through recovery and therapies, I can either deal with it and go forward, or I can get stuck in time. We have some mutual friends that get stuck in time and love to look for sympathy, and poor pitiful me, I don't want to be like them. And so those are my role models of what I don't want to do.
So how long were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital for about 2 months, 2.5 months, 2.25 months, right around that figure there. Happened in May, I got out in July, so 2 months plus.
And what was going through your mind?
Oh
during
God,
that time?
I just wanted to get out of there. I wanted to walk again because the first few weeks, walking from here to your camera was a big thing, and then walking down the hall was a big thing. And I was determined then, and I still am now, because in my mind, I'm not done with recovery. I'm still, in my mind, determined to come out of this better and stronger than when what happened. I got lucky in the sense that while this was all going on, I had a heart attack on the table. And had I not been in the hospital at the time, it could have been a widowmaker, because they went to go and do the stents, and they said, no, he's too far blocked. And my wife said, well, how far blocked is too far blocked? 98, 97, 90, it was too far blocked. I think one valve, or I don't know the medical terminology, one was at 90. The other three were at 95 plus. So, for the wrong reasons, again, to be grateful is an understatement. So from that point forward, it's just recovery from one thing after another. I don't know if you can see, there's a slight discoloration here. This is metal. So, but it's there. I'm glad all this happened in modern times. Through the technology, they put Humpty Dumpty together again.
Can you go through the airport?
Yeah, I was hoping I would set up the, it's funny you asked that. That's one of the things I was looking forward to. It's so weird, it's so minor. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be fun when I go travel. I'll make this thing go beep, beep, because I had rods and screws in my back. I had this here. I said, I'm going to make these people crazy.
Did you ever feel like, and I don't think it's in your personality to give up, or did you think that, how did you remain so positive being in the hospital for a couple of months?
I would be lying to you to tell you that there weren't dark moments. In the hospital, all I was concerned about, with quite honestly, was just getting out and going home. The real work became when I got home. It was 18 months before I could return to the marital bed, because I couldn't sleep on this side. I can't sleep on that side. I have to sleep standing up. And then as you get stronger, other things happen too. You're still, time does not stop moving. So you find yourself getting up several times a night to go to the bathroom. Then you're walking around the house, and you don't want to wake everybody up. So time is marching forward, and you start to create your own dark thoughts. What if? Oh my God. And what about? Oh no. And again, you have to kind of shine the light on those things in the course of the day and say, you know what? You need to talk to somebody. And so you have a choice. You can pay the deductible, go talk to someone, or you can look crazy and talk to yourself. But you need to talk to somebody and get those things out. And I did, a little bit of both. A little crazy, a little bit, but I worked through it, and there's a lot of tools at our disposal, whether it's professional counseling, whether it's inpatient in the hospital, good friends. Sometimes you don't have the clue, but sometimes the smallest compliment and smile and a hug from a friend goes a long way, Alan. A long way. And those are the things. And then, like I said, having seen what my parents went through, and I got nothing to complain about.
So, you made a comment earlier, and you were talking about how, it was a while, and you was just angry, but then you realized, you accepted that, hey, it was just an accident. In that moment, what was it in your mind that clicked for you to say, you know what, I can't do this
I was
anymore?
telling the story to somebody about the accident. I found myself regurgitating the same old crap. And it dawned on me all of a sudden, it couldn't have happened this way. Physics dictates that the way I remember it, it couldn't have happened that way. And I would have to ask my wife. And she said, well, no, it didn't. It happened this way. I said, oh. For example, in my mind, I remembered the impact happens like this. And yet, I remember rolling across her windshield and hearing my ribs cracking and hearing her glass shattering. All these dramatic things in my head. And I ended up about 15 feet or so away from the car. Then I find out from the fact that probably never touched the windshield. I did hit the bumper, and I ended up about 6 feet away from the bike, on my back, no less. Broke my back, no less. But the drama is gone. So, you know, it's like when you're a kid and you see Frankenstein versus the werewolf, and then you see it as an adult, you realize it's really not that scary. So the same thing here, chain of events. Was she guilty of running a double stop sign? Absolutely. But she's got to live with it. And her burden, I guarantee, is a lot more than what I was happening. So when I started to realize that the accident wasn't the way that I thought it was, and there's human error, and you have to forgive. I'll never forget it. I mean, that's stupid. But you have to forgive, because if I carry that around, someone once said to me, and I was angry at a mutual friend, and she said, he's the only one, he doesn't even know you're angry at him. It's your cross to bear. So she has no idea how I'm feeling. So I either had to let it go or hang on to it. And I worked at letting it go. It didn't happen overnight. Randy, I will not tell you that it happened overnight. And believe me, I wouldn't ask her out for drinks, even to this day. But nonetheless.
Especially if she's driving.
Pardon me?
Especially if she's
driving.
driving.
Especially, you know, and I'm very cautious of how I say this, because I know it's going to be published. And I don't want to let on to names and what this person does, because
Right.
Let her live with what she's done. I'll live with the end results and call it a day. If our paths ever cross, my attorney said don't, so I won't. But if our paths ever cross, I'm not going to hold it against her. I don't harbor anything. It happened. Like Nike says, shit happens.
Yeah.
Can I say that on the?
Oh, yeah.
You just did.
Okay. I just did that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, with Bonnie and the kids,
I felt very sorry for my wife. To go from having a robust husband to having what could have ended up worse. I mean, they really didn't know what the end result was going to be. She didn't know what the end result was going to be. She had the job of reassuring 5 kids that he's going to be okay. She had the job of reassuring my mother, I'm going to be okay. My dad was a little bit aloof. I think maybe in his way, he knew I was going to be okay, and partly was hoping I'd be okay. The siblings, you know, I had 2 in California and 1 local. Her job was not an easy task. She's like, you know, the airport traffic controller. I couldn't do shit. I had enough just getting up and going to physical therapy and walking around and doctor appointments. I did quickly learn through my recovery that, just like in a lot of other events, you're in charge of your own destiny. And if I relied solely on those around me to be accountable for what they do, I could have very easily missed a lot of physical therapy appointments, doctor appointments. Lord knows I was on 21 different prescriptions when I came out of the hospital. And what was very frustrating there was a separate sidebar, is I was working very hard at reducing medication, and here I was now back on a whole bunch. And I had to make up a chart because my caregivers couldn't figure out how to take care of me. So Bonnie was like, how do you keep track of this? It's in the matrix. The kids tease me about it. I love to live by spreadsheets and matrices. So this is why it's here. But with her help and the kids' understanding, they helped me along in their own way. And there were times when I ruffled her feathers and vice versa. We're human. None of us have got a halo gleaming over our heads. She's not Florence Nightingale. She's my wife. And, I'm not the perfect patient. Far from it. But we got through it, The desire to succeed, I think, was greater than the willingness to fail.
What are you telling your children, your friends, just about being positive? Like how are you trying to, or do you try and help them with their lives? And
I don't. You know what? Something was said to me many, many, many years ago. It's easier to pull someone along than it is to push them into something. And if you try to sell them on being positive, all it does is turn them off. But I try to show them the positive side. What was it? Somebody said you can lead by authority, you can lead by example. One way is short-lived, and they'll look for a shortcut to break the rules. one way is a life learning event that stays with you forever. I learned as my example from my parents, and I thought the best thing I can give to my children, the best gift I can give to them is let me be an example of what it's like to be a positive person. It's easy to be a negative Nancy. It's not so easy to be a positive person. But after time, I find it easier now to be a positive person than to be a negative Nancy because I don't want that. My life is pretty darn good. I wake up happy and I'm sober, you know, and some people wake up miserable and they're not sober, and they wake up miserable and they are sober, and they don't know what to do. I just said, well, I'm just not going to be miserable. And the rest kind of falls into place. And again, I repeat it over and over and over. I didn't happen to be breaking down the barrack doors, making me march out into the cold, watching 6 people fight over a potato. So I've got nothing to really complain about.
What's next for you, Steve? Like you got a new lease on life, double, because you survived the accident and survived the Widowmaker.
All right,
Close to
so
Widowmaker.
that's a good question. That's a loaded gun. I hate you for bringing that to me. What's next? You know, life is always learning. I recently parted company with someone who I thought was a real positive influence in my life, and she was a very long, dear friend. And something, obviously, somewhere along the way was taken out of context or whatever, and she went off like a nut on my wife. And so I didn't want to affect our relationship. I said, let me explain something to you. As much of a friend as she may or may not be, you're my spouse, or my wife. I will have your back. If this is how she treats somebody I care about, then this is not somebody I want in my life. So when you say what's next going forward is, I'm now in the process of more appreciation for those that I have near me. Instead of seeking out new friendships, cultivating the ones I have. Instead of worrying about how it should be, just accepting it the way it is. And I have a choice. I can accept you the way you are, or I can just walk out the door and I'll never see you again. You know, those are my 2 choices. So those are the things I do. And again, I try to do that for my children. For an example, I'm going through some new stuff. I haven't had a chance to tell you this. And they're doing testing because I've got NASH, non-alcoholic specific hepatitis of the liver. So, and I'm in stage 3, which is no cure. But I'm part of a beta test simply because the medicine, there's 2 schools of thought. One, which is very minute, says the medicine might help me, but the other one says it won't. But you know what will happen is my study will help contribute to those down the road who need the help. So if what I'm doing will benefit someone else in mankind, so be it. Why not? Don't I owe them that modicum of help? Don't we all owe each other that?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the grandchildren. You had limitations, obviously, when you were recovering. Your grandchildren, you had limitations when you were recovering.
Oh yeah,
and
oh
everything.
yeah.
What are their age groups like?
Okay,
when
at
you're
the time of
playing
the
with them?
accident, that was 2015. They were 3.5 and 4, but they came to visit me in the hospital. And again, you know, one of the first things you do to a child to endear them to you is feed them. It's like any other type
I know
of
many adults like that.
well, no, but it's like any other animal, any other species. The first thing you do for nurture is you feed them, and that immediately latches them onto you. So here I'm in the hospital with wires and tubes all over the place. I just pretend they weren't there and did what was natural. I was awake, you know, and in retrospect, as I'm talking to you now, I'm realizing I was probably only awake maybe 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and nodding up and waking up, nodding. But to them, it was a great thing. So there's a bond that can't be destroyed. And as time went by, yes, I couldn't pick them up. Walking around the block was like, well, we'll see when that day gets here. It's here now, but now it's the other side of the spectrum. Because of the age and my out of shapeness, walking around the block is again almost out of the question. But they're older, they're mature, they understand, or they're getting mature. They're an inspiration because now they're becoming to the age where my first granddaughter, she got bat mitzvah, and my grandson, his bar mitzvah is coming up in November, and those are the milestones you look forward to. Just a little bit longer, let me stay a little bit healthier, a little bit longer, and those are the aspirations. If you set yourself up with unreachable, unobtainable goals, then you're going to fail. And then that failure says, see, I knew I couldn't do it. But if you set yourself up with, okay, instead of walking a mile, let me get around the block. And that seems to be the trick. And I have them as often as I can. And do I get frustrated? Yeah, I get frustrated. There's 9 of them buggers and 1 of me. And they come in and they're loud and they're boisterous and they're messy and they're always hungry with hollow legs. No matter what you feed them, it's never enough. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. Not a thing.
Steve, did you ever come in contact with anyone else that had gone through a similar situation, like a motorcycle accident?
Yes. Through Facebook, more than anything else, social media is giving you a way to find out others who have gone through the same thing. And you're right about one thing. I do have an unusual positive outlook but that's who I am, I guess. Maybe perhaps you're correct there too. I want to give them a positive attitude, and I try to give them words of inspiration, and they say, yeah, but. And when you put a but in between whatever you say, what follows, you've surrendered. So I try, again, to lead by example. There's a couple of people I know, and again, I won't mention any names, that I've reached out to them, and one of them was having a very tough time, and I kept telling me that, be thankful, you still got your bike, you still got your health, so on and so forth, and all the gloom and doom. And then this particular summer, I guess he went back out riding again. For whatever reason it was, and my heart was singing for him. I was as if I was riding with him. So I live vicariously through their things. It gives me, instead of being jealous, it gives me as much joy to see your success as it does to have my own.
One thing we ask our guests, and you being our first guest, you get to kick this off, is, and you kind of touched on a few things, but what would be a positive statement that you would leave with everybody? Like, what is something that people could recite or think about every day?
Okay.
Just trying to stay positive.
I can't even take credit for it because I heard it from someone else who got it. He got it from his roommate's father. And to me, as soon as I had the accident, you go to the dark place and it's there. But I always remembered that there's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The problem will change. Better or worse, you don't know. That's not in our hands. We don't control that destiny. But to check out, once you do that, you can't go back and do a Scooby-Doo movement. It just doesn't happen. If you want to change it, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. You have a choice. Live this and embrace it to the max, or wallow in self-pity. I mean, I don't know how to make it any clearer. Death is a permanent position. I don't want that position. I'll take a different job. Thank you. And if I could give anything to anybody, reach out to someone positive. If you a stranger, sometimes you get more from a stranger than you from a friend. It happens. And fate is very funny. I bumped into you in probably, I won't say a pivotal moment, but real close to it. And you fed me some positivity that was needed just in the right dose at that time. So I'm human. I'm susceptible to that lull. And when it comes through, then I'm in the mindset that make sure you tell them how grateful you are and how positive you were. Because I needed it and you shared it with me.
I appreciate that because sometimes you don't even know
Correct.
what you're saying to someone
Correct.
that may trigger that positivity.
You don't know what a great influence you could be on somebody, and it could be just something as kind as holding the door open for them. You did this on a couple different occasions, and one of them was at a lull of a mutual friend and the tragedy that no parent wants to go through. But you said something, I can't even remember what it was at the time, but it just left me with that euphoric feeling that, wow, someone else is listening to me.
Cool. Well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
One last question. What's on the bucket list?
I want to sing. I'm determined to get on stage. I have a friend who's in a band, so on and so forth. And prior to COVID, he had sent me some music and some sheet to study up on. And unfortunately, my voice has changed so that I don't know if I'd be throwing tomatoes at me on stage or not. But I still want to do that. I would love, I can't say I can't act because I did the commercial for Acker, and that was a hoot. And by the way, everyone watching this, I didn't get a nickel for it. It was just fun. And also a way of saying to somebody, again, the positive note on that is get somebody competent to take care of you. And you learn things about that too. So I want to be a singer. I want to be in a rock and roll band.
Well, you're vastly better off if you try to do something and fail than if you try to do nothing and succeed.
That's right.
So go out there next week and go
I don't know next
find
week.
that stage.
After the holidays.
Do it. Yeah, that's what I said. After next week, go out there and just do it. Go to a karaoke and start doing it, and then you don't know where that's going to lead.
It's funny you say that. There's an event which I'm not going to mention who or what or anything else because I don't want to flop in front of too many people. Or hopefully I'll make my debut.
Okay.
Let us know.
We'll see. Oh no! I want to fail in front of strangers first, or if I succeed, let me succeed in front of strangers. Then I'll share. When I got into sales, they always said, make a list of your 50 closest people, your friends, your family, you're this. That. Nobody wants to deal with you until you have a success story.
Right.
So we're going to leave that alone. I'll let you know as soon as it happens.
Well, Steve, we want to thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being with us.
This was fun.
Especially on our first show.
Was
And
fun.
that's what it's going to be about, being fun.
I want to say something to you two, and I want the people out there to hear this very succinctly. Things like this, just like a nice thought, are so important, especially in these time and days that we're living in. There is enough animosity to fill the world 10 times over. There's not enough kindness and civility to go around. If we have more of this, inevitably the bucket would switch the other way. One has to make room for the other. Reach out and say hello to someone, say a nice word, be a mensch. This world can be as good as we make it.
Well, we're working on it. Randy and I are working
My
on
hat
it one
is
day at a
off to
time.
you.
Thank you.
This is
Thank
well
you.
needed, and for those who don't appreciate it, I feel sorry for them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
It means a lot.
It's great.
Welcome.
Well, if you'd like to be a guest on our show, call 313-454-1104 or email us at talkingpositivepod@gmail.com. And whatever you do today, go out there and make it a positive day.
Smile.
That's right. Stay positive.